Welcome back, everyone, to day 2 of the Kaggle and Google 5 Days AI Agents Intensive course. I'm Smita Kolan, Senior Developer Relations Engineer at Google Cloud, and I'm here again with Anant Navalgaria. Anant, welcome back.
Hi, everyone. Haven't seen you all since yesterday. But thanks for joining and looking forward to taking you through the rest of the course.
Good to see everyone again. I see some folks from yesterday already in the chat. And if you're new and just joining us, welcome. Drop in the chat what was your best takeaway from day 1 was. We would love to hear it. All right, to get started, let's actually do a quick overview. So throughout the week, you will get white papers, companion podcasts, hands-on code labs, daily live streams, and AMAs just like this one. And also an optional capstone project at the end where you can compete for Kaggle certificates, badges, swag, and recognition across Kaggle and Google's social channels. So if you have registered for the course, the content will actually land directly in your inbox. If not, everything is actually going to be on the Kaggle Learner portal, and it will be announced in Discord as well. Also, before I forget, quick thanks to everyone who put this together, the Google researchers and engineers who wrote the white papers, the speakers joining us this week, and also the amazing Discord moderators who have been answering questions nonstop. They are truly heroes.
And before we proceed, Smita, I wanted to add on something. We have seen a lot of you having an token quota restrictions, and as we communicated, since the free quota is limited, and a lot of you will have these issues as you proceed across the code labs. However, even though the course material is no cost and free, like all the white papers, the podcast, etc., if you'd like to go through all the code labs without hassle, you can choose to upgrade to the paid version if you would like to. The course material is free. However, the free quota is limited, so you can, if you'd like to make the most, you can choose to do so, or do so next week when the quota is refreshed.
Awesome. Okay, so let's actually get into day 2. Yesterday, we covered what an agent actually is and the shift from writing syntax to expressing intent. Today is all about the layer that makes agents actually useful, how they connect to tools, to other agents, and to the rest of the world. So here's the problem the white paper actually opens with, and it's actually worth thinking about for a second. Say you have a handful of different models, Gemini, or maybe an open source model, or whatever you're using, and you want them to work with a handful of tools like Jira, BigQuery, GitHub, or even your own APIs. The traditional way is to actually wire this up in one custom integration, per model tool pair. So for example, 5 models and 10 tools, you would have to write 50 integrations to write and maintain and all of that. But when anyone's tools API actually changes, or multiple integrations can actually break all at once. So that's the technical debt that the protocols that we're going to be talking about today are actually designed to eliminate. The white paper today is really about to tell you how you can get out of that trap. It walks through a set of open protocols that actually standardize how agents connect to tools, to other agents, to user interfaces, and even to payment systems. So Anant, do you want to walk us through the white paper in more detail?
Yes, thank you, Smita. And hi, everyone. I hope you've had the chance to go through the white paper, the new white paper for day 2. Please bear in mind that the white papers for this iteration are more vibe coding adjusted and specific. But if you'd like to go through general agent building, and especially how agents are built without the vibe coding aspect, we have also linked in the FAQ the updates to the older white papers from the last iteration with the newest content and tech. So right, starting off with the white paper for today, the new white paper, which is titled Agent Tools and Interoperability for Vibe Coding. So in yesterday's white paper, we established how the software development lifecycle is shifting from manual syntax translation to expressing pure intent in natural language under the core in architectural formula, agent is equal to model plus harness where the harness plays a very major role in making all of this happen, especially for AI-assisted coding. Today, in today's white papers, we explored the industry standards that allow our agents to safely talk to the rest of the world. First, as Smita mentioned, we tackled the N into M prototyping crisis. So if you have N models and M tools, like the 5 and 10, as Smita mentioned, that leads to O and N into M integrations, which is like 50 in this case, but can easily blow it up, as you can imagine. And this is especially important when your coding agent, etc., connect to lots of external tools and MCP servers. And then later on in the white paper, we showed how the MCP or the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, acts like the USB-C for tool connections, reducing that complexity, that N into M complexity, to a clean linear O(n plus M) scale using standard transports like STD input-output, as well as server sent events, or SSE. Later on in the second section of the white paper, we also look at the evolution of agent architecture. Just like web applications moved from monoliths to microservices, we are moving away from bloated single agent monoliths to distributed multi-agent networks. You also see that in some of if you have tried out the Code Labs and the Gravity, it's a multi-agent system behind the scenes, and as well as the ambient agents that you can build with multi-agent architecture. We also broke down the agent-to-agent, or A2A protocol. It is an open standard designed to serve as the universal language for specialized agents to coordinate and discover each other via registries, and then delegate tasks using machine-readable agent cards. We also demonstrated agent to UI, or A2UI in short. Personally, I think this is a game-changing open source standard that allows agents to output interactive user interfaces dynamically and safely, specific to the need of the user, instead of having one static interface, and using trusted component catalogs instead of just running arbitrary code. Finally, we cover autonomous commerce. We also talk about Universal Commerce Protocol, or UCP, as it's well known, and how it helps agents build shopping carts, while the Agent Payment Protocol, or AP2, acts as a secure payment gateway, applying strict human-signed mandates so your agent never overspends or minimizes chances of overspending. So yeah, we covered a lot in this white paper. So hopefully you had a chance to play with the Code Labs and read through the white papers. Off to you, Smita, to the exciting Q&A.
Thank you, Anant. And also, same tip as what we mentioned yesterday. If you haven't already, the podcast is actually a really great entry point before you dive into the white paper. With that said, let's head on over into the Q&A. So we have some really amazing expert hosts on the panel today. We have Alan, Kanchana, Mike, and Pierre from Cloud AI. And let's actually now get into the questions. Welcome, everyone. How are you guys feeling?
Feeling great. Excited to be here.
Awesome.
So, Mike, this question is for you. How is Google Cloud lowering the barrier for developers to integrate open protocols like MCP and A2A, just like we mentioned in the summary, into production cloud stacks? And what do you see as their long-term future?
Yeah. Before I answer the question, you thanked everybody else, and I want to thank you, Anant and Smitha, for doing such a great job pulling this together this week. It means a lot to us at Google and the whole community, everything that you've been doing. So in the same way that Google's putting these protocols out there, you're putting a lot of knowledge out there. So thank you for that. I think in the same way, like if you go back in time to the origins of the internet, the same way that protocols like TCP and UDP became the ingredients and the standards by which so many things run on top of and everything since, it's very much the same way that we at Google have been trying to invest and work with the rest of the industry to come up with ways to make sure that interoperability is there for all the pieces that you need for agents to be able to work together, interact together, to be able to get to the right tools at the right time. I look at protocols like MCP, and you're going to spend a whole bunch of time on that today, but just like, how do I take care of a simple transaction, to A2A, which is how do I actually ask another agent to take on some work on my behalf and come back and solve a problem, to A2P and stateless MCP and UCP and all of the other pieces that are out there. I think the ways that we're making this easier for developers and actually like make it, lowering that barrier of entry is one, by making these open standards, making sure that they're donated to the right kinds of foundations that can maintain them, to making sure that they are standards, making sure that it's not something that's implemented in a bunch of different ways, but that can be implemented whether you're running things here on Google or whether you're running them elsewhere. 3, we're also integrating them into the product. So whether you're using ADK as Agent Developer Kit, or whether you're using one of the other software developer kits out there in the industry, you will find these same protocols implemented and used in very, very similar ways to help make sure that you can integrate those into your workflow. And then this is a vibe coding class. And so having things like Agent CLI and other things, be very aware of how these different protocols work so that as you're building agents, you're able to build them right into it from scratch. So hopefully that helped answer the question.
Thank you.
Can I also jump in and add more? Is that all right?
Yeah.
I will say underneath the protocols, there's a whole lot of infrastructure and design, right? And the design is required for the protocol to work at scale. If you're just running on your laptop and you're the only user, perhaps scale isn't a concern. But there's a lot of concerns with running MCP servers at scale, especially at Google scale. We've done some pretty heroic heavy lifting on the current version of the protocol and helping to design the next version of that protocol to allow for stateless transport and a handful of other affordances at the core transport level. So you as a user, your developer agent just wiring the bits and pieces in may not see all of that, but under the hood, there's a lot of really impressive engineering going into it to make it scale.
Oh, I hope everybody has a chance to play around with this, because I personally find agent-to-agent protocol was one of my favorites, and all the protocols that are coming along with it. Awesome. All right, then let's move on to the second question. So this is to do with another one of the protocols, and Ellen, for you. Will A2UI protocols like A2UI replace traditional app stores with temporary, highly personalized agent-generated user interfaces, which are rendered dynamically demand? Or where do you see, like I can imagine in a mobile app, do you see this being like a customized for each user, or do you see like this being more like application specific, not generic thing across app stores?
Probably. It's hard to say. I think that we're moving to a future where all software is somewhat agentic, right? It doesn't have to everything be generated on the fly all the time, but we're going to get used to interacting with software that fits our needs and our context and the moment a little bit more closely. The UI layer of that, how do I interact with that system, will follow a similar trajectory. It will be personalized to me, and will remember that I like buttons, or I like sliders, or I prefer an audio interface, or whatever. So all of our applications and all of our user interfaces will become more personalized and also more specific to the moment. So if my agent can talk to your agent, or my subsystem can talk to your subsystem and fill in 2/3 of a form for me, I don't even need to see that form. I just have to say, yes, go ahead and do it. And then I fill in the parts of the form that are necessary for this interaction. So those seem relatively small, but they're going to end up changing how we interact with applications and going forward. That's not even super future looking. Some of that is totally happening right now. One of the anecdotes that I talk about a lot is a tracker app on your phone has a UI that is provided for you by the creator of that phone, that app. But maybe you don't need all of those buttons and you want half of those buttons, or you want to add something else to track or whatever. It's very easy to just change the configuration of the UI. All of the same widgets persist. You just change the configuration of the UI and that static app keeps working. That's like the smallest example, but it gives you a hint of where we think we're going with everything being configurable and customizable.
What would be really cool, I really like the idea of automatic personalization. Imagine, maybe you can work on a prototype on this someday, Ellen. Imagine keeping track of interactions of what users are doing, and then seeing what they like, and then customizing your UI proactively to say, oh, we noticed that you like big search bars, so we have created it for you in this color, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think parts of that are absolutely happening. I mean, I've got demos that do bits and pieces of this. I'm looking forward to putting them together.
Feel free to link them to if you have some, otherwise share it later.
Sure.
All right, cool, thanks a lot. All right, then to the next question, Smitha. Right, this is for you, Kanchana and Pierre. So how should database architectures evolve to natively export secure read-only MCP servers to reduce their integration complexity? So I'm talking about native database, think Cloud Spanner, SQL, or even non-SQL. How should they evolve?
I'll start first. So we talk when we talk about MCPs in general. Even in the last iteration of the white paper, we talked about security and we talked about trust a lot. And in this paper, we did talk about why it's needed and what are the key components of it with respect to configurations and stuff. MCP is kind of becoming the standard. It is a USB-C kind of a protocol for across your databases. So we know that. When I think about how do you make it secure, particularly with respect to, avoiding a DDL, DML kind of transaction, then we need to keep it at different layers. And some of that is very much, protocol based. So for example, if you are using, say, MCP, and in Google's, you have MCP Toolbox. And MCP Toolbox, if you're using, and we talked extensively during the last iteration about it, is how do you prevent it in such a way that it only registers tools that are needed for a select versus giving access to a DDL or a DML. And I have also seen iterations where customers use it for read replicas. They don't give access to the production data, or they give access to the production read data, not for the right instances. We need to be very specific in the architectural choices and make it security native as part of your design of building an MCP-based architecture. In one MCP, which is the MCP for all of the databases, we do provide options where you could specify the viewer, the endpoint is always the viewer and not the writer or any other segments which could be added. But security should be front and foremost of your decision making, and you also need to be very specific in how you are defining it as part of your architecture.
My perspective is also about a lot trying to put ourselves in the shoes of an agent. Let's say agents experience, sense the world, and interact with it in a different way than we do. So we just need a bit of more of introspections. And all these databases have been designed for humans, and the experience has been optimized for humans as the main consumers. And now that we're moving to an agent-first world where agents might be, let's say, on par users alongside with humans, or be the primary users over time, that means that also the experience there has to change to make it more friendly for how agents like to do things, or agents like to express things, because they might not be able to have the same sense of risk that humans do, or they might not have the same sense of optimization that humans do. And therefore, it is better, try to optimize experience for them and making the agent experience optimized for that. Because there have been lots of people, let's say, or developers out there that have been focusing on optimizing developer experience. And now, when trying to make MCP data connections for agents and so on, then we need to optimize for agent experience here. So obviously, things like be able to interact with the database without external process, but using natively server-sent events. This is a good thing to do there. Be able to create agent-specific role-based access controls. do some context-aware payloads optimization so that the results that come back from the databases are optimized for agents views instead of humans. Or built-in telemetries are all things that help towards that path, let's say.
Right. So putting security I take away the following phrases: putting security first and foremost, which we'll see a lot into our day 4 white paper, especially in the context of vibe coding. Security is a big concern. And the second thing is put yourself in agent's shoes. That's a quote I'm going to do later. All right, thanks a lot. Pierre, now Smita, off to you for the community questions.
Awesome. Let's get into the community questions. So the first one we have from Seema. How are Google's standardized data pipelines for autonomous AI collaboration actually reshaping the core skills that an aspiring data analyst needs to remain valuable? And I think this is actually a good one to start with, because this is the question I think a lot of folks in adjacent roles are quietly asking themselves right now. So Mike, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, Seema, that was a great question. Thank you for asking that today. Everything's changing from the name of our systems to the role. I think even like as we talk about all of our pipelines and we talk about all of our systems, like we've even started calling it the agentic data cloud, where you've got the tools like there's a big query data engineering agent, there's the data science agent, there's all these things that are available now. And when I think about what that means from a role perspective, I think as you know, I look at some of my best friends that have been data analysts, data scientists, data engineers. You walk up to this big pile of work with this little shovel and take a whole bunch of manual work to make sense of where that data is coming from, what that data looks like, what are the patterns, how do you make it usable for others? And I feel like this is really changing what your role is, from trying to dig into this big pile of data to like really becoming more of an architect and really becoming more of somebody that's operating how these and supervising how these systems are coming together, and able to do so using some of the things that we've already talked about, talking to things like the agents I mentioned via A2A, and treating these data systems as autonomous systems that you can then generate code to get to the data you need. You can generate processes, you can generate data, and equally as important, generate visualization and have some of that visualization come out and be able to experiment with a variety of formats that, instead of taking days or weeks like it might have before, can happen in minutes. And that's really empowering for you as an individual to do that, and really important for you to experiment. And so I'm really glad, Seema, you're taking this course in order to pick up some of those things.
Amazing. Thank you, Mike. And then to kind of add on to that, what do you think this means for someone who's kind of maybe early in their career? If you were giving advice to like a junior analyst right now, like what would you tell them to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to early in my career, and I go back to like watching others early in their career, and it was really hard to get access to scale. It was really hard to get access to proprietary, expensive data systems and tools. And it really democratizes access. It means that wherever you are, like you can access the same thing that an engineer at Google's using to get access to data, or an engineer in these many other huge organizations. And it really helps you be able to operate in the same way. And in fact, being able to take the course and do these things, it's you're not just operating the same way, you're operating with the same knowledge and tools as everybody else. So it's really important to play around. I've been excited recently because I've been looking at things like ADK downloads and trying to troubleshoot some stuff and other things. And even myself, like I used a BigQuery agent to go to the public BigQuery download of user agents and get a bunch of details. And there's all kinds of public resources and public tools out there that you using agents can go do in order to get this data and come up with really simple scripts and tools, which a couple of years ago would have been a ton of work and would have been inaccessible to most folks.
And especially also in terms of learning new tools, like writing BigQuery, optimized pipelines and queries. Now you can just use anti-gravity or any other coding agent, and it just, or CLIs, and just does it for you, right? Like you don't have to kind of, the learning curve is much shorter now than it used to be.
Yep. And you can put that shovel back in the shed and like now focus on like operating all these things together.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's move on to question number 2 from the community. So we have this from ASME. How can organizations maintain design system governance within dynamically generated A2UI environments while also practically separating tools from collaborative agents along the MCP and A2A boundaries? Alan and Pierre, if you would like to answer this.
The first part of that is easy, and I need to think more about the second part. The first part is A2A is designed to support your design system. We do ship it with a set of basic components to let you get started, and you can use what we're handing you and render some configurable UIs on the fly. But the expectation is that you already have a front end, you already have a design system, you already have a UI that works. Maybe it's on web, maybe it's on Android, etc. You've got a bunch of components. You've got a bunch of styles. That's the thing that you want the agent to be able to drive. You don't want to have to rebuild your front end to let your agent drive it. You just want the agent to be able to drive your front end. So that's the approach taken by A2UI. And sometimes that's not obvious, so I reinforce that message. It is a catalog of your components that establishes a contract between your front end or your design system with the agentic backend. So that part of the question, that's just how it works. The second part of the question is with clear separations between MCP and A2A boundaries. And I think that that's going to be maybe a design thing. I don't know, Pierre, do you want to jump in on that?
Yes, like I agree, it's a design thing, definitely. And maybe I can also share a small anecdote about it. Like when I joined Google about 2 years ago now, there is the opportunity to do usually in the first month sort of an experiment, capstone project, or anything like that. And that was before the protocol existed. And I was quite into generative UI. So what I did was I just tried to take the Gemini 1.0 family of models from a couple of years ago and just send a prompt and get back some widget auto-generated to generate Pokemons or these kind of things out of the box. And in that case, there was no protocol at that point. And therefore, I just started trying to, at times it will just work incredibly well out of the box, and at times you just fail catastrophically, and nothing will just generate, and then you just get some random errors. And then I will start just trying to write some boilerplate code to intercept errors, fix React code, or interact dynamically and things like that. And that was very, very messy. And that's when, obviously, then having a protocol like this completely changed the game, since it just maps the intent of the agent to JSON, and then you have these library components. And with MCP, obviously, you just give it superpowers, and it's up to the users then to decide if you want it more on the front or at the back of the interaction there.
Yeah, agreed. And then also on the MCP versus A2A boundary, the framing that I would kind of pull from the white paper is whether like the caller actually needs a result or needs maybe like another, participating agent to take responsibility. If like you need a result, such as you need something from a document, you're fetching something, you're reading a row, that's probably MCP. And then if it's actually a, active collaboration and end result that you want to get from another agent, that would be more along the A2A route. So it's two different problems and then two different protocols.
That's why we'll see more MCP for design system side and A2A for interaction handling, basically.
Yeah, the delegate. So I mentioned it was a design thing. I guess the UI that I am interacting with, if I'm interacting with an agent and that agent is doing everything, perhaps the tools under the hood are what matters. But if I'm interacting with an agent and it hands me off to some other agent, or it says, I'm asking somebody else to take responsibility, we'll get back to you later. That's like a user experience design system. That's where I think the boundary is.
Great. Okay, let's move on to question number 3 from Kushal. How do you design an automated safety kill switch to prevent AI agents from getting stuck in an infinite loop and also something which drains API budgets?
Thank
I think
you.
this is really practical as well,
Yes.
especially
And
for
this is
people who want to run an agent for many hours these days. Yeah.
Yes, Kushala, thank you. That was an excellent question, particularly because I think it's not just the consumers. More enterprises are feeling this as well. We see this in the news. We see, token budgets being cut off. Enterprises giving some restrictions over their employees to make sure they all stay in the budget. So it's not just the agents, it's also everywhere we see that. And FinOps itself is a huge practice by itself. When I were to think about, for the last decade, we have been talking data is the new oil. But in the era of AI agents, the token is the new oil. When you think about data, it's just a raw reserve, whereas the token becomes that refined fuel that actually powers the engine. For engine in the sense is agents. So whoever is optimizing their token pipeline is probably going to win. So that is a serious context by itself. And in cost optimization, particularly here the question referred to, how do I give a kill switch, is how do I make sure it's suddenly switched off, is a good question, because we want to avoid problems that causes immediately. And I have to say though, you probably already started looking at ADK, Agent Development Kit, in our previous iteration, but in there are some maximum iterations cap you can specify. So it doesn't go in a loop, it terminates correctly. And also in Agent Development Kit, you have meta usage data where you could track for anomalies. You could look for, where am I seeing a skew where it's causing problems, so you could divert it accordingly. And in Google Cloud, you could specify, hey, a billing budget, like when it crosses $50, $5, whatever is your amount, to cut it off. That is kind of a kill switch I would offer. But I would strongly suggest we need to think of this in an architectural point of view. Particularly, hey, are you implementing caching? And tomorrow you would learn about probably skills. So are you learning about skills? Are you doing batch requests? And one more important thing, which I normally see, is are you using a high expensive model for all of your transactions versus you probably need a lower cost model for some regular transactions? So there are some architectural choices you need to make, but yes, you do need to have a kill switch so you can switch off the agents as and when it comes. And I'm glad you asked that question, because that often gets overlooked when you're so excited and creating your new iteration. But yes, that needs to be part of your architecture design pattern.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a bit, so one more thing I would say, even going back to the basics, go back to our prompt engineering, the second iteration of this course, and read the prompt engineering white paper to see how you can engineer your skills or
Yes.
prompts to be very token efficient. Fine tuning or even just prompt engineering can save a lot of tokens, which can help with minimizing token usage to not require a quick switch. Hopefully that soon at least. Right.
Yeah, awesome response, Kanchana. I really agree. Tokens are the new oil. And then also on the prompt engineering front, am I the only one who asks my agent to always just talk in bullet points to save up on tokens? Yeah. Okay, we can move on to the final question from the community. So this is from Ritika. And she's asking, will the next major AI breakthrough come from better base models or from agents autonomously developing their own tools?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Ritika, that's a really good question, because I think it's and Alan, I bet we're gonna be very similar on this. It's both. It's going to be a combination of we should expect models to continue to improve. We should expect the capabilities of those models to continue to expand. We should expect to see additional kinds of models coming out in the industry. But we should also expect to see new ways to interact with those models, new ways to build things with those models. I think the question was on agents autonomously developing their own tools. I think more and more, like, we're going to see reuse matter. We're going to see, as these model capabilities continue to increase, cost of these like really premium models gets higher as well. And so we're going to see, I think breakthroughs are going to be all over the place. Breakthroughs are going to be in efficiency. Breakthroughs are going to be in knowing when to use the right model at the right time. Breakthroughs, I look at like being able to solve the broadest sets of problems, which are going to come not just from the model and not just from the agents, but from the context and the data that we're making available in very usable ways. I think there's a lot of breakthroughs that we're going to see and observe. And the message that, if you listen to podcasts, if you listen to you listen to interviews, we're still very early in agents and still very early in AI. And so these breakthroughs are going to come from all directions. Alan, I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're already seeing the feedback loop or the inner loop tightening up. I think all of the research labs are using agents in their workflow to improve their workflow, to improve the models. Researchers are working on trying to get to the next algorithm breakthrough for efficiency, or to attack different angles of trying to make the models better. All of those individuals are using agents and using these tools. That is a feedback loop. I don't think that the feedback loop is super closed and super tight and fully autonomous. I think that these are tools that humans are using to improve the systems, but that still matters. We are seeing the acceleration continue because of that. Your question was, is it going to come from the model or is it going to come from developing better tools? And I really can't tease those things apart. I think that they are the processes that we are using to continue to improve the capability spec. They're intrinsically released, linked. That's the word I'm thinking of.
Awesome. Kanchana and Pierre, do you have any thoughts on this question as well?
They both, Mike and Alan, had covered it pretty well. In my point of view, as both of them are saying, models are becoming closer and closer to agentic in nature by itself. And the new coin word for this week in X is loop engineering. So when I think about where the evolving comes from, like I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what others here. So is it harness? Is it loop? Is it model? Is it agent? But one thing I am confident about is the models are going to be more and more very specific in its ability, specialized abilities like coding, like AI for science, like other abilities. But the experiences we are going to bring in our consumer or in our enterprise world is more going to be in this engineering loop, harness, architectural pattern, whatever that you might call it. That might be the case which might come. But I'm so excited for the future just to see this evolving and the era we live in.
Amazing times, definitely. Any last sentences from each of our guest speakers? Alan, starting off with you.
I didn't get a question about AP2 or UCP. I expected that to show up. There's an alphabet soup of all of the protocols. I think it's justified because we have new tools and we have new capabilities and we're trying to figure out how to get work done. Ultimately, all of this is just us trying to establish conventions to get work done so that I can talk to you and you can talk to this other person and we trust those interactions. That's really what our goals are. It is where I spend a lot of my brain power.
Nice. Yeah, so we just selected like 4 questions. There were a lot of questions which we haven't been able to select. But I'm sure Pierre, off to you.
For me, I mean, right now when we talk about models, we mainly talk about LLMs, which are most common, let's say, popular and so on. But one of the main things that I like most about Google DeepMind that is different from other research labs is that there is still lots of focus on research that is pure, that is not just LLM driven. And I think from going to that aspect, there is still, let's say, there is no wall there. There is still a lot of way to go and a lot of progress to go on models that are not, let's say, autoregressive in nature, but could be diffusion-based or JEPA or other architecture like AlphaFold and so on, that are completely different and also embedding domain knowledge. And that's one of the main things about DeepMind that I really love. And I'm really curious to see how this is going to evolve into the agentic world once this model also mature from the research lab.
Nice. And especially the Void models I'm very excited about that Demis mentioned in I/O, which kind of diverge a bit from the typical text-to-text models and like anything to anything. I find that also very exciting, just to add on to your point there. Cool. Mike, you're...
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about the other day with this coming up that, you know, I look at this class and I look at folks that are starting to vibe code who've never been developers. And I look at traditional developers are becoming more like consumers, and consumers are becoming more like developers, and like these walls and boundaries are falling down. And it's really exciting to see. And I think like, look at examples out there. I mean, the author of OpenClaw had never been a professional developer himself and wrote this product and sold it for $1 billion and did that. Like, there's a lot of opportunity. There's also a lot of realism in all of this. I think as you build things, as you deploy things, don't just use these tools for the sake of building. Use them for the sake of securing your product. Use them for the sake of protecting people's data. Use them for the good of building better products, not just for building products. And I think it's one message that I think is really important in how we build and deploy agents is, even though you've now got the ability to do anything with it, just like a car, you can go out and drive it as fast as you want. But you've got to, you've got some boundaries and some things that you should do because there's others on the road. You've got to interact and do that. So I think like, take all this power you're being handed this week in the course, but apply it responsibly and realize it's really on you to make design patterns and choices in how you build things. As you talk to other agents, as you build these things, like more and more transactions and more things are going to happen this way. So like, I'm really excited to see everybody here jumping into it. I was really excited to see these questions. I'm excited to see where the capabilities go. And I'm also excited to see people do it responsibly.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you to all the guest speakers for coming on here to answer all of these questions. Really appreciate the in-depth answers that we got here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, moving into the code labs. Today's two are a really nice pairing because they actually take you from I've heard of MCP to I have MCP servers actually plugged into my coding agent. So Fran's going to walk us through both of them. Over to you, Fran.
Thank you, Smitha. Hi, everyone. Hi, chat. Another day of Code Labs. We're already on day 2. Can I get some reactions in chat if you worked through day 1 Code Labs? How did day 1 go? Oh, quite a few. I like it. And I saw some good discussions on Discord too. If you get stuck when you work through a code lab, your first instinct should be to prompt anti-gravity for help. Like, help is right there where you're already working. And if that doesn't work, Discord is a great place to get help and discuss what you've been doing. I'm Fran Hinkelmann. I lead the AI DevTools team in Google Cloud DevRel, and I'll guide you through the code labs for day 2. We have, like Smith already said, we have 2 more excellent code labs. The first one will look at how to make your agents even more powerful by connecting them to external tools and canonical documentation using MCP. Second, we'll show you how to run the same agentic workflows directly from your terminal using the anti-gravity CLI. So let's look at the first code lab. So again, the links for the code labs for day 2, you find them in your emails and the discussion post. There's no submission process once you're done. We just want you to carefully work through the code labs and learn as much as you can. Go experiment. So our first code lab shows you how to configure an MCP in anti-gravity. Who knows what MCP stands for? This came up a bunch in the Q&A today already. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you've used MCP before. Yes, Model Context Protocol, MCP. So for agents to be truly useful, they need access to real-time accurate information. If you only rely on the model and the training data, it might be outdated and you get hallucinations. MCP is an open protocol standard that solves this by allowing agents to connect to external APIs securely. So in this first code lab, you'll configure MCP, you'll configure anti-gravity to use the developer knowledge API in Google Cloud. And that makes your agentic workflows much more sustainable and reliable. And then in the second code lab for the day, we will introduce the anti-gravity CLI, the command line interface. If you did yesterday's code lab, I hope you did. I saw a lot of you did. You already know the anti-gravity agent manager where you worked all the time and you also worked with the IDE, but this is all about the CLI, the terminal. UI is great, but sometimes you need the control of the command line. So the anti-gravity CLI, AGY, brings all the core agentic tools like planning and tool calling directly to your terminal. In the lab, you'll go through how to install it on your operating system. We'll go through the basics, and then you'll work through some really powerful use cases here. So these are the code lab assignments for day 2. As I said before, you don't need to submit your code labs at the end. There's no test or submission required. We just encourage you to work through them, explore, learn as much as you can. Have fun with the day 2 labs. Back to you, Smitha.
Thank you, Fran. Both of those code labs are amazing, definitely worth running end to end. And also the developer knowledge MCP server that you just used in one of those code labs is actually one of over 50 plus Google managed MCP servers. So what you got hands on today is actually something that teams are pointing to at production anyway. So once you're done with that code lab, it's also worth checking out a bunch of other code labs that I'll be leaving in the description box below, which include the BigQuery MCP server, the Maps MCP server, as well as Cloud Run's MCP server. With that said, let's move on to the pop quiz.
Amazing. Here's your favorite part of the day, everyone. Moving on to the first question. In traditional ad hoc development, integrating N models with M tools requires O of N into M complexity. So how does the model context protocol help with this complexity? Right? Your options are A, to logarithmically scale it, O log N of M, to linearly scale it, O N plus M, to constant complexity scale, O of 1, or to polynomially scale it. Think back and the answer will be shown in 3, 2, 1, and it's B. MCP helps in linearly scaling your N models into M tools integration. Moving on to the second question. What represents the transition from a Swiss Army knife or single agent monolith to logically partitioned internal subagents with restricted tools? Your options are A, cloud native microservices scaling, B, internal specialization, or C, RAG context chunking, or D, prompt schema validation. So think about it, your answer will be shown in 3, 2, 1, and it's B, internal specialization. And about spec-driven development, for that, you learn a little bit about this in day 5. Stay tuned for that. All right, next question. So your next question is, which protocol developed by Google and donated to the Linux Foundation acted as a lingua franca, allowing specialized agents to negotiate, brainstorm, and delegate tasks to each other? Your options are A, MCP, B, A2A, C, A2 UI, or D, AP2, which is the agent payment protocol. Think back to Alan's conversation and Mike's conversation and the white paper, and the answer will be shown in 3, 2, 1, and the correct answer is B, A2A, which is which allows you to specialized agents to negotiate, brainstorm, and delegate tasks to each other. All right, the second last question. What is the agent to user interface, or A2 UI protocol? Is it A, an LLM executing raw arbitrary code, as Pierre mentioned earlier, a framework agnostic standard for declaring UI intent using trusted components, or is it C, a tool that translates screenshots into database schemas, or is it D, a terminal interface utility for command line prompting for GUI? Your answer will be shown in 3, 2, 1, and it's B. It's a framework agnostic standard for declaring UI using trusted components. All right, off to the last question for the day. What are the respective roles of UCP and AP2 in autonomous procurement? Your options are A, AP2 builds the order, UCP secures and authorizes the financial transactions, B, UCP defines database schema where AP2 connects the MCP server to client, or C, UCP handles merchant side of things where AP2 manages the payment side of things, or D, where UCP manages local storage where AP2 manages dynamic browser execution. The correct answer will be shown in 3, 2, 1, and it's C. UCP handles the merchant side of things where AP2 manages the payment side of things. And that brings us to the end of the pop quiz.
Awesome. Thank you, Anand. Also, quick wrap up before we sign off. Day 3 assignments will be dropping shortly, and tomorrow's topic, agent skills, picks up right where today's left off. We've covered how agents connect to the outside world today. Tomorrow is all about how they manage their inside world, memory, long context strategies, and skill set let agents specialize without bloating every single prompt. Keep the discussion going on Discord. The mods are active. And also, as a reminder, questions selected from Discord can win Kaggle swag. So keep that in mind as well. And get started on the code labs if you haven't already. Try plugging in one of those MCP servers that we talked about into your agent and see how the output is. Also, if you've missed day 1's live stream, it will be linked in the description box below as well. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Looking forward to your questions. See you tomorrow.